Welcome to Mediocre Gaming, and today we're playing Destiny 2. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and salutations. Today, third Tears of Charm. Let's get to it. So the Blind Well is almost like a private area for a public event, and it's a very specific public event where you have to fight guys to charge up the light to get to a boss, and then you beat the boss, and then you're done. So you need to have a charge of light, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, or unstable light, and corresponding level of the enemies will correspond to the level of light that you add to it. So tier 1 is going to be the easiest, tier 2 is going to be more difficult, tier 3 is more challenging, and unstable is the most challenging level of the Blind Well. So as you go up the different tiers, not only does the level of the enemies increase, but also the types of enemies and the number of enemies. So tier 1, you don't see as many melee opponents. You don't see as many of these brutes or exploders, whereas tier 2 you start seeing some, and tier 3 you see a whole lot of exploders and meleeers, as well as the regular guys that shoot and buff the enemy, not to mention abominations. So as many of you already know, that you can relatively easily, even on a tier 3, get all the way up to the boss. Yes, that still works, but it's not going to help you with the boss. So just because you're able to get to the boss doesn't mean that you're able to beat the boss. Now, if you're doing it legitimately and you're able to defeat the opponents with 30 seconds or more to spare on each segment of the tier, you're probably not going to have a problem taking out the boss at the end of it. Now, the tier 1 boss is one boss that's in the back by the door. There's two bosses for the tier 2, and they are in the center, right next to where you start the event. And as you guessed it, tier 3 has all 3 bosses, and they're all boss abominations. So each boss has a shield. Each boss's shield has to be taken out by someone that is carrying a Harmony Orb. Now, there are several Harmony Orbs to be had when you get to that point. For a tier 1 boss, there are 2 enemies that carry the Harmony Orb on either side of the door. Tier 2, there are 4 enemies, and tier 3, there are 6 enemies. Now, once you clear out either the 1 boss by the door or the 2 bosses in the center for a tier 3, the enemies in that area will despawn. They will disappear. So if you take out, whatever your strategy is, if you take out the big boss by the back door, then the enemies over there will despawn, and you'll only have the enemies around the well itself. If you take out the 2 enemies in the middle, like we did here, then those enemies will despawn, and you'll only have the enemies at the back door. So it is almost like 2 separate encounters that are put together. So when you clear one encounter, that clears out the ads for that encounter, and you only have to deal with the ads for the other. So most of the time that you'll spend is the 4 waves leading up to the boss fight. Each wave you have to get up to 100%. You have to kill 100% of, each enemy will give you a certain percentage more difficult enemies will give you a higher percentage. So regular enemies may only give you 1%. Orange enemies give you a little bit more. Shielded enemies give you more than 1%. Abominations more than likely give you more than 1%. And then you have the shielded guys that you have to take out with the Harmony Orb, which are worth a certain amount as well. So plan your strategy accordingly. If you're down to 1 minute and you're only at 50%, you need to step up your game. And if everyone that is in this blind well is using their supers, then there should be enough orbs around that you can use your super quite often as long as you stay alive. And when you get to the higher tiers, it is more difficult to stay alive because there are more bad guys that can take you out very quickly. Not to mention that their level is higher as well. Now, if you are in a large group at the blind well where you can actually talk to each other, then you can tell and let everyone know where you're attacking so that you don't attack one guy and a couple other people attack another guy and another group attack the third guy. You really want to focus on one boss at a time. Now you can work as a team to take out multiple, but it makes just as much sense to work on one enemy and then work on the second and then work on the third. The reason for doing so is once you beat one of the bosses, you get a little bit extra time. It'd be better to have one guy dead and two guys at full health where you get an extra 30 seconds or a minute on the clock versus having all three guys at 2/3 health and run out of time. And basically you just rinse and repeat. You take one guy out, go to the next guy. Take him out, go to the next guy. Whatever your strategy is. If you take out the guy at the back door first, then you go to the central area and you take those guys out. Take out the guys at the well first, and then you go to the back and take out that guy. Whatever your strategy is, whatever works best for you, that is what you want to do, and you want to all be on the same page. So if you've got 6 people, or if you have 9 people in the blind well that is doing a tier 3, if you have 9 people, you know, you could probably spare half of your team and work on 2 different bosses. So, I mean, it's very, very dependent on how many people you have, what your levels are, etc. But I do recommend that you're over 530 or higher to do a tier 3. And even at 530, it could be very difficult. Now, once you get finished with the tier 3, whoever put that in is likely, that fire team is likely to all get a Seed of Light. So there is a reason to do it. Additionally, you have an opportunity once you complete it to put in an unstable, and then you can do that challenge. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to ring the bell before you leave to be notified of all future episodes as soon as they go live. And thank you for liking, commenting, and subscribing, and we'll see you next time.
Down. Primary well could take another boost.